Evening everybody. I realise I haven't done a video on this channel for quite some time, and for the more astute of you may realise that I've actually had a haircut since. But mainly I haven't done a video on this for I haven't really had a subject that I've really wanted to discuss or put my viewpoints across, or if I have, I've never got round to doing it, and I've thought of the idea when I've got no access to a camera or things like that. So Adam, you should be pleased that I'm doing another video, because you asked me about me doing another one of these ones quite a while ago at this stage, and I've never actually got around to doing it. But this one I'm doing, and I suppose it's on the subject of equal rights. And equal rights, in this case, between the sexes. One of the things that's come up over the last, I don't know, few weeks, is a woman named Catherine Kiew. Something like K-I-E-U. A woman who drugged her husband, tied him to the bed, cut off his penis, and threw it in the garbage disposal. And the response that has come about from it. One of the responses that has come about from it is that he probably deserved it. That has been shouted, mostly by women, across the internet. He deserved it. What did this guy do? Did he cheat on her? Does that mean that he deserves to have his genitalia cut off? Did he physically beat her? Does that mean he deserves to have his genitalia cut off? Did he abuse a child sexually? Does that mean he deserves to have his genitalia cut off? Well, actually, in that case, I'd argue, yeah, why not? But that's a different story here nor there. That's a different video completely. So what did this guy do, whose crime was so heinous that it deserved the mutilation of his penis? He filed for divorce. As far as I've been able to ascertain, he didn't cheat on her. He didn't beat her. He didn't knock around with someone else. He filed for divorce. So, in what is extremely premeditated, she drugs his food. He eats it. He passes out. She drags him to the bedroom, ties him to the bed, strips him, cuts off his penis, and throws it in a garbage disposal. Apparently, she then calls the police, says, he's in there, he deserved it. Echoing cries of women all over the internet. He deserved it. Now let's flip this around for a minute, shall we? Let's just say Carlos Krieg. I'm not picking that because it's a Latin sounding name or a black sounding name or a French sounding name or anything like that. I'm doing it as a deliberate pun on her name. Right, yes, Carlos Krieg. His wife cooks his dinner wrong. So he drugs her, ties her to the bed, and cuts her clitoris off. What do you think's going to happen to the first bloke who turns around and says, she deserved it? He's going to get lynched. It will be World War III if something like that happened. That man would be more reviled than Hitler if he did that to a woman, if he cut off her clitoris like that. Which brings me on to my next point. A CBS show called The Talk. Now, I'll be honest, I've seen the clip of their reaction to this, and it partly inspired this video response. There's only two people on there that I recognise. One being one of the women from The Big Bang Theory, the one with the glasses, the one that bangs Leonard a couple of times, and Sharon Osbourne. And this is a TV show being broadcast. Okay, and I'm going to tell you this, and then I'm going to tell you something else in relation to it. Well, not quite in relation to it, but along the same lines. Sharon Osbourne, a respected, well, supposed to be a respected woman found it hilarious that a man that this had happened to him, that this had happened to a bloke. She found it absolutely... She was laughing the entire way through the segment of the TV show. It's on YouTube. She thought it was funny. She thought it was hilarious. To me, that's absolutely disgusting. Right now, I do not believe in violence in relationships at all. A man does not have the right to hit a woman, and a woman does not have the right to hit a man. And a man doesn't have the right to hit a man, and a woman doesn't have the right to hit a woman. I think I've pretty much covered most of the bases there. So, why is it acceptable for Sharon Osbourne to laugh at something like this? Okay? Another case I'll mention is the case of Andrew Gray, who worked for Sky Sports and lost his job over a sexist remark that was not intended for the cameras and was just overheard by the wrong people. He lost his job because of it. Yet Sharon Osbourne and the other women on that panel, bar one, can laugh about it on national TV and not a thing is done. We're supposed to live in the 21st century. We're supposed to have equal rights and equal say for everybody. So why is it okay for domestic violence towards men be a point of derision? Yet the second you make a joke about sexual violence, well, any kind of violence towards women, that's it, you're a misogynist monster. Frankie Boyle is a classic example of British comedy, of taking things, okay, yes, he took things regarding the joke about Harvey having sex with his mother. You know, you can argue he took that too far. But as a rule, if I was to do a stand-up comedy act, and I was to advocate the mutilation of women, and the beating of women, I go on forums where if I make a joke of get back in the kitchen and make me a sandwich, you'll get hounded for it, and I'll get hounded for it, even though, you know, I don't really do that one because it's been done to death and it's not really funny. But it's a point. Is that in the 21st century, why is it so acceptable for men to be the object of derision? No doubt the answer is, well, women have had it for centuries past. Well, yes, they have. No one's denying that. No one's denying that women have had, you know, that women have been the bottom end of it for a long time, but they're not now. The whole point of feminism and equal rights is supposed to be that everybody is equal. That you don't have men are apparently better than women. Equal rights should be about equality, not about women now getting their own back. That's not fair. That's not equal rights. Equal rights is not women being placed ahead of men, or black people being placed ahead of white people, or people over the age of 60 being placed ahead of the age of people over the age of 30. It's not supposed to be about that. Okay? I'm currently unemployed. I was made redundant a couple of months ago, and I'm trying to find a new job. I despair every time I find the ethnicity questions. Because as somebody who has sat behind an interview table, and I have seen this happen, I despair every time I hear the ethnicity question. I have three things that go against me. I'm white, I'm a bloke, and I'm straight. Due to equality laws, and this is not the fault of anybody apart from the people who made them, I can possibly lose out on a job to someone who is less qualified because of their skin colour. It's called positive discrimination. It's supposed to be as illegal as negative discrimination. But because of equality laws, it doesn't happen like that. Now, in all fairness, equality laws, such as ageism, and you've got to meet quotas of certain ethnicities based upon the areas that you live in. At least this is how it works in the UK, anyway. You know, you can argue, you can get around equality laws quite easily. They're actually quite redundant in many regards. But I still despair when I have to fill in those ethnicity questions, because they ask you your origin, they ask you your ethnicity, and some of them do ask you your sexuality. Oh, and do you have any disabilities? Oh, sorry, that's a fourth problem I have, is I'm not disabled in any way. So because they will receive so many applications from people who are basically the same as me, well then, there's a chance that I will lose out. In the name of equality. Well, how is it equal if I get shunted back to the bottom of the pile, or someone else gets shunted to the bottom of the pile? Excuse me. Because of who they are. You know, if we are talking about equal rights, then it should be equal for everybody. It doesn't matter whether you're white, doesn't matter whether you're black, doesn't matter whether you're female, doesn't matter whether you're male. You should be based and you should be judged on who and what you do, not what your skin colour is, what your religion is, what your sexuality is, what genitalia you have between your legs. That is what equality should be. That is what equal rights should be. To go back to my earlier point, the difference between this Catherine Keogh case and a man who would do something similar would be very, very different. This guy is being mocked for having such a horrific act performed upon him by his wife. Okay, she's going to be ex-wife, but she's still his wife. You know, how is that in any way, shape or form fair? You know, and something else that I heard about, and I heard this on the news the other day, Clare's Law. Now, Clare's Law, it will allow women to check on the past history of new partners to see if they have been violent. I disagree with this on one particular principle. I have no problem with people who have had violent future partners being warned about people who have had violent past. I have issues with the fact that it is only for women and men. It is only for women looking at the abusive partners who have been male. I don't think women are on there. Okay? Now, whilst I will agree, it doesn't happen in as much as it does towards women. Domestic violence towards men happens. I have been in an emotionally abusive relationship. When my ex-girlfriend broke up with me, she spent 6 hours taking every single vulnerability that I had ever trusted her with and throwing them in my face, to the point where she was so good at making me out to be the bad guy that by the end of it I was crying in her lap, totally convinced that I was the most awful person in the world, and that everything that she had done to me I deserved. She was that good of a headfucker. So, admittedly, I've never been in a physically abusive relationship where a woman's been concerned. And yet, domestic violence towards men is not broadcast as much as domestic violence towards women is. You know, Keira Knightley did a very, very powerful advert in regards to domestic violence towards women. And domestic violence towards men is still a bit of a, a bit of a sore subject, because a lot of men won't come forward. You know, if you've got some 6'2" strapping rugby player who's getting the absolute snot kicked out of him by a 5' nothing with a frying pan, he's not going to come forward because he's going to be ridiculed for it. Because most decent men know that you don't hit women. They've been taught up to believe they don't hit women. And some women, not all, by all means, I'm not tarring all women with the same brush here. Some women will turn around and use the fact that a man won't hit back to bully their partner. And the reason why I disagree with Clare's Law is because it is only for women. Now, what happened to make Clare's Law was terrible. Yes, it shouldn't happen. And I agree in theory, in principle, with the idea that people can research potentially violent partners, the same way that people can research on where sex offenders are. I agree with that, because I unfortunately am very old school in forms of punishment, in that your consequences, your actions that you take, you should have the consequences, and you should face the consequences, and you should live up to those consequences. Now, so this law that's coming in, this Clare's law that they want to bring in, if you're going to do it, then don't just do it for women, because men are in abused relationships as well, both from women and from gay men. You know, one of my friends was in quite an abusive relationship with another man who robbed him, who used to beat him, and who left him nearly homeless. But male-on-male violence, or female-on-male violence, doesn't have the same kind of oomph that male-on-female violence has. You know, and I do not want to detract away from women who are abused, women who are beaten by their partners, women who are sexually abused by their partners. Because it does happen, and those people need all the help they can get. I mean, and so many people turn around and say, well, it's their own fault for staying in it. That is true, but only to an extent. Only to an extent. I think one of the worst cases I ever heard, now admittedly I heard this from a friend who it happened to a friend of theirs, so it's not someone that I know personally, was that this woman, this female friend, was in an abusive relationship, and one time she'd had enough, and she basically turned around and said, I'm leaving you, I'm walking out, and she screamed at her and she went to walk out. Apparently what he did was he span around, he punched her so hard he knocked her clean out. When she woke up, she was strapped over a chair, and he got two of his mates to rape her. You know, those kind of scum, I have not, you know, they deserve what they get. So, you know, it should never be taken away. But at the same note, it shouldn't be allowed to completely dominate so that there's no room for anything else. And I've heard this from women when I try to put this argument forward on forums when this has been discussed. And you will get the feminazis say, but the women, it happens to women, it happens to women, it happens to women. And you just feel like you're banging your head against your keyboard to say, yes, I know it happens to women. I accept that it happens to women. I understand that it happens to women. But it also happens to men. And if we are going to call ourselves an equal society, and, you know, if we are going to call ourselves an equal society, we should accept that other people need help other than one group of people. You know, it's one of the things that I do believe quite passionately in. You know, and it's one of those things that sometimes some people will try to make you feel guilty for. Because you're trying to take focus away from all the battered wives that are out there. But what about the battered husbands? You know, as a rule, male on female abuse is physical. There is an aspect of mental and emotional abuse attached to it. But it also does happen that I've suddenly got orange on my screen now. Trying to give up cigarettes. These e-learning ones are actually, e-cigarettes are actually quite good. Tastes a bit plasticky. Anyway, sorry about that. Yes, you know, and I'll sometimes get into trouble for actually seeming to detract. You know, sorry, that's what I was saying. Male on female violence, as a rule, tends to predominantly be physical abuse. Now, I'm not saying that it's you know, it's 9 people out of 10 beat their partners. But abuse within a case could be 80% physical, 20% emotional. With abuse on men, women can be sexually abusive, they can be emotionally abusive. It's not been unheard of for women to hold their children over a man to keep them in their life, as in if you leave you'll never see the kids again. So whilst I'm not saying that equality towards, whilst I'm not saying that abuse towards women, and I feel like I've got to justify myself here because I'll have some feminazi coming on to me saying, well, you can't have that, we can't have that. Men, why should men have crisis centres? Why should men have halfway homes? Why should men have hostels? Women need them. So I always feel like I've got to justify myself, which in an equal society I shouldn't have to do. I shouldn't have to justify my viewpoint by giving my viewpoint and then saying, but that shouldn't be the way it happens. Going back to the original point of the video, which was the Catherine Keogh case, I shouldn't have to, people should not be laughing at this bloke. This should not... Okay, certain people are going to laugh at it, but certain people will laugh at anything. But the fact that just because he is a man who has had his penis cut off, some women find this absolutely hilarious. As I said, the most common comment around seems to be, he probably deserved it. He filed for divorce. And he deserves that to happen to him. The guy's 60 years of age. And for the likes of Sharon Osbourne on national television to openly mock and deride this horrific crime. And not just a crime because it happened to a bloke. A crime because it happened to another person. It happened to another human being. For no honest, viable reason. For them to do that. I do, and I've always liked Sharon Osbourne. I thought, she's not had it flaming easy. Married to Ozzy with those kids, she hasn't had it easy. But she severely went down in my respect and my estimation of her after what she said in regards to this Catherine Keogh case. If we are going to have equality, it has to be equal. It has to be for human beings. Not for me as a white male, not for somebody else as a black male, not for somebody else as a white female. It has to be because I'm a human being. It doesn't matter that I've got a penis and I don't have breasts. Well, actually, no, I'm getting on a bit. I'm kidding, I don't have breasts. Yet. Give me a few more years and, lots more beer and I'll have breasts. But anyway, I shouldn't... it should be for people. It should be... The fact that you are a human is what gives you equal rights as everybody else. I should have no more right than the little old lady who lives next door but one to me. And they should have no more rights than me. Doesn't matter what your skin colour is, doesn't matter what your religion is, doesn't matter what your sexuality is. As long as you are a decent human being, you should have the same respect given back to you. But that's my take on it anyway.